Are we
Okay,
live now?
we're live now. Elisa, would you like me to remove the cover image?
Yes, please. That
Okay,
was
no
great.
problem, I'll do that. And there you go. There you are. Hello,
Great, we're
Elisa.
live. Are we live?
We're live. Hi, Elisa. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Engine-ius film review. First of all, thank you so much to everybody tuning in to our first ever live review. This week, we're going to be reviewing Nora Twome's Oscar-nominated animated feature film, The Breadwinner. If you have watched this film before or in advance for this screening, great. Please do get involved in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the film, and we're going to be asking some questions along the way. If you haven't seen the film, which is absolutely fine, we hope that maybe this film review will inspire you to give it a watch. Please still get involved. We'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts. But just a heads up that there will be some spoilers. And I'd just like to preface this review as well with saying that, of course, today's words and opinions are our own. They in no way represent our organisation that we work for, which is Sunset Film. And I'd like to just start by introducing our guest today. So Deb, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, and maybe just mention a film that you've seen recently that you really enjoyed.
Oh, hi everyone, thank you Elisa. So yeah, I'm Deb Richardson. I, until 3 days ago, was the producer at Somerset Film, and I'm now the newly appointed creative director, 3 days in, so just finding my feet with that role. I think people will know that I've been involved with Somerset Film. Well, I joined 2 weeks before the engine room opened, so 17 years now, and I've done lots of different roles. But I'm really looking forward to taking on this new one. Yeah, it's funny because as a team we've been sharing like our top 5 films and that sort of thing. And as Dan said, every time you watch a new film, that top 5 kind of changes, and my favourite film is always the last one that I've watched. So of course it's The Breadwinner, which is the but I did so that's the most recent one I watched, obviously. But before that I watched a film called Woman at War, which is a Scandinavian film. It's about the climate emergency. And it's such a great film. I would recommend it to be watched. It's a beautiful film because you follow this woman's story, and at the end it kind of comes back with a punch to remind you what this film is actually all about. And what it's all about is the climate emergency and the actions that we need to take as individuals.
Very good, thank you, Deb. That's brilliant, thanks so much. And Rich, if you could also introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about what you do, and then of course give us a film that you enjoyed recently. That would be great.
Hello, I'm here on the screen in a little box. Hello. So yeah, I work at Somerset Film at the Engine Room with Deb and Elisa and the rest of the team, and I work as the creative technologist. And I guess I get to work on exciting projects that might not necessarily include film, but include some aspect of digital creativity, lots of work with the community, and not been there as long as Deb, but still been there for a few years. And in terms of films, my film that I saw, what Deb said is interesting. The most recent film you saw is probably your favourite. So there's a film called You Were Never Really Here, which is a Lynn Ramsey film. I don't know if anybody's seen that. And it's got Joaquin Phoenix in it. Joaquin Phoenix, who, in a way, he kind of sets out his character for subsequent role that he'll play as Joker. But it's about a traumatized veteran. There's quite a lot of violence in it. But it's kind of interesting because it's a film where reality and kind of what's in the central character's head start to merge So you as the viewer aren't quite aware of where you are within the story. So kind of reality and dreams kind of start to merge. A little bit like in the film that we're about to review.
Good. I need to watch that. I can't believe I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
That sounds really good. Thank you,
But
Rich,
yeah,
and thank you, Dev.
But you have seen The
My name's
Breadwinner.
Elisa. I'm sorry, what?
But you have seen The Breadwinner, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's useful. Okay.
Yeah, so my name is Elisa. I'm the assistant producer at Somerset Film. I am, I think it's fair to say, relatively new to the role. In fact, I had my 3-month review, I think one day before we were advised to work from home. So I'm still very much learning the ropes. At the moment, I'm really enjoying getting to know the kind of nitty-gritty of the organisation. I'm doing a lot of the foundations of it, so the admin side of it, the social media side of it, which I'm enjoying, and I'm occasionally helping Rich with his Ignite Somerset project where I can. And I'm also hoping to be trained up when everything kind of settles back to normal on coordinating our BFI Film Academy that we run, which will be really great. Before we get into the review, I also just want to take a moment to address the situation. So, of course, in light of COVID-19, the outbreak, we are all self-isolating, which is, of course, the right thing to do. So I think it's fair to say that we will be watching, and probably have been watching already, even more films than we would be usually. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to use this film review to stay connected to our wonderful and far-reaching community of film lovers, filmmakers, film reviewers, which is why we do really urge you to get involved, either by commenting, or we have a Facebook page, Instagram and Twitter. We're just starting this film review and kind of online process. So if you have any tips for us for film reviewing, or if you even have any feedback after watching this, please do get in touch. We're really doing this so we can connect with you. So if there is anything that we can do, please let us know. And yes, I just want to give a heads up that because it is our first time, we may not be able to reply to all the live comments, but I will personally make sure I go through them all and respond after. So, The Breadwinner. I cannot wait to hear everybody's opinion, and I won't give away too much of my own, but just to give you a synopsis. So The Breadwinner tells the story of Parvana. She is an 11-year-old Afghan girl growing up under the Taliban in Afghanistan, roughly 2001. When her father is wrongfully arrested, Parvana disguises herself as a boy so that she can provide for her family. Now, with dauntless perseverance, it's fair to say, she draws strength from the stories her father told her and ultimately risks her own life to discover if her father is still alive. Now, it's a timely and inspiring tale about the transcendent power of stories and their potential to unite and heal us all. The film has been widely recognized. It was nominated for Best Animated Film at the Oscars in 2018. I believe it lost out to Coco, also a brilliant film. And it won Best Adapted Screenplay at the Canadian Screen Awards. It won the Cinema for Peace Justice Award, as well as the Annie for the Best Animated Independent Film. So I think it's fair to say it was very, very successful, but nonetheless, we are here to hear about Deb and Rich's and my opinions as well. So, Deb, if you could start us off by giving us your overview, your review of this film. A little mini.
Dawn, I've got to go first. Oh, wow. It's all right. I'll set the bar really low. Don't worry. Well, firstly, thank you to Elisa for choosing this film, because I don't think I would have watched it. I certainly didn't know about it, to my shame. And I was kind of, after I watched it, I was putting myself in the shoes of, a programmer or, a controller of one of the TV channels, and thinking about, well, actually, what time slot would I put this in, and what channel would I put it on? And I wonder if it has slightly not reached as many people because of that. And I think this is where film clubs and film societies are kind of so important, because particularly locally, this film probably wouldn't have had distribution in any of the kind of bigger cinema chains that are kind of local to us anyway. I thought it was a really moving film, and it resonated in so many different ways. And I have to say that I had a quite immediate response to it in those kind of opening 10-15 minutes, where we see the oppression that they are living under, and it made me really angry. It made me really angry to see, you know, women and children and creatives and teachers just being oppressed in this way. And I suppose, or just thinking about it as well for that community, what has happened to that community. And we see through a sequence really early on, kind of repeated images of how this country has been torn apart by conflict. And possibly, though I don't know because I'm not an expert on Afghanistan, probably plundered for its cultural treasures, probably. And so it kind of speaks, for me, this film speaks to what can happen actually when your self-identity and all those things that help you to form that self-identity, so your culture, your songs, the stories that are shared, what happens to you when that is ripped from you and when you are oppressed, and kind of, you know, what can kind of happen to a community, and how sometimes that can lead to what happens then is that people turn in on themselves, and actually we see a community that are kind of pulling themselves apart, really, after all these years of other people kind of pulling them apart. Now they're sort of tearing themselves apart as well. I thought it was really kind of pertinent to where we are right now and the situation we find ourselves in, not comparing our experiences at the moment to the experiences of that community, but just the little things like the self-isolation, that as a family they're trapped in their home, they can't go out for food, and that, you know, their freedom has been taken away from them. We have given up our freedom in order, you know, for the greater good, to protect one another and to protect the NHS and those sorts of things. But I think it's really pertinent that we should be mindful to make sure that those freedoms come back to us, because they can be all too easily taken away from communities. And also in terms of the violence that we see, and in some respects we're seeing now, because we know that domestic violence, you know, reports of domestic violence have increased dramatically in the last 2 weeks. So also that idea of sometimes, you know, you might, if you're lucky, you're in a safe place, but there's an awful lot of people that aren't in a safe place. So, you know, we've got that. I mean, and this film also speaks to the power and the value of storytelling. And indeed, our character uses that herself. Her father has used it to educate her, which kind of the Taliban are saying that shouldn't happen. You know, she's a girl, she shouldn't be educated. But he's using those stories to educate her. And she uses those stories to reassure her brother and her family and her friends in the same way. And throughout the film is woven another story that she tells, and we kind of see in chunks. And there's a really powerful sequence towards the end where the kind of that story reaches its climax, and that was just so emotional for me. Sat watching it,
Yeah.
honestly. I'm such a such a softie, but it really did, and I was really surprised by that. I was really taken aback by how at that moment, and all credit to that filmmaker for achieving that, really, for drawing me in that way, even though I felt so angry at the beginning, you know, these circumstances these people are living in, to draw me in. And but I do think, you know, this is a great film, and I'm kind of nitpicking now, but there was some problem really inherent in that story, in the way it kind of mixed, and I had a real problem with the ending. And I'll always remember, I forget who it is that has said, so somewhere in the 17 years of working for Somerset Film, I can remember someone saying that if there's a problem with the end of the film, then the solution usually lies in the beginning. And also, sometimes when we watch films, we you know, we have all those other films that we've kind of seen as well, that we kind of take with us as an audience member. And so one of the films that I had it playing in the back of my mind whilst watching this film was He Named Me Malala, which is also really beautiful animation in, and animation which draws and takes inspiration from the Pakistani culture, and how rich that culture is and was, you know. And I think for me, that the story that interweaves probably gets a bit too dark too quickly, and I think I would have liked a little more insight into the Afghani culture, a little bit more about the richness of it kind of at the beginning. It's slightly tricky, isn't it? Because, you know, the filmmaker definitely alludes to it, because the books are hidden away, and the kind of the hangings that are on the back of the family wall are very dark. You know, we don't see that tapestry come through. But I wondered whether the part of the problem is that because this is a little bit of a Western interpretation, and so it kind of lacks a little bit from having more of that culture featured on screen. And, you know, even down to the film poster is, it echoes that front cover of National Geographic, you know, with Afghan girl with her bright green eyes, and indeed even the animation uses those kind of Disney techniques of the really wide eyes. She's a beautiful girl. So I think I would have just liked more of that culture, so that we understand more about what has been taken away from them. But although, to be honest, I still got it.
Great, that's so interesting. I think it is. There's a lot to be said, I think, about the fact that this story was adapted on a book written by a Westerner and adapted by Westerners. I think it would be interesting to delve into that a little bit more. I personally thought they did a really good job of portraying it quite authentically, but I'd be really, interested to discuss that more a little bit later on. Thank you so much, Deb. There's so much there that I wish I could just dive into. That's amazing. And Rich, what about you? What did you make of the film?
I'm just going to put myself up here. Again, thanks, Elisa, for asking me to be part of this first review. It was, and as Deb has said, it's a film I probably wouldn't have watched. So thank you for asking me to watch it so I could review it. There was so much in the film that I've noted down a few notes that I'm going to share with you. Interesting listening to Deb first. I'd echo some of those points. But The Breadwinner, these are my notes. It's a story about pain, survival, courage, community and family. It's about what's possible when you're struggling to survive against an oppressive and authoritarian power. The story opens with a father and daughter. You did say at the beginning of this, Elisa, didn't you? There's going to be a few spoilers, right?
Yes, yeah.
So it opens with a father and daughter exchanging stories with beautiful titles like The Silk Road and The Nomadic Ancestors and Hills of Gold. So it's clear that this community uses stories and fantasy as a means of survival and as a means of escapism from their oppressors and from the landscape, which is depicted in a very barren way. So, yeah, the landscape of Kabul is barren and it's littered with the debris of war. The men in this animation are depicted as either subservient to those in power, and there's a scene when the central character Paravana is desperately trying to buy some food from a street vendor, and you can see the eyes of the vendor that he does want to sell this girl some rice, but he's scared that if he's seen to do so, to sell food to a woman or a girl who's out on her own, unaccompanied by a male, then the repercussions for his family and for himself would be terrible. On the other hand, the men who are young and fit enough to fight and are signed up to the Taliban are depicted as the brutalisers. They shout at the women and the girls who are unaccompanied, "Stay inside where you belong." Okay, that's shocking. It's shocking, isn't it? And to see that in an animation, we think of animations as being these kind of, quite friendly, moving image sequences that we can, share with everybody, the whole family. But there's some quite brutal scenes in this film. There is, even in the young men who are fit enough and young enough to go out and fight, there's the briefest glimpse of an inner fragility present in one of the young fighters. You see that character sitting in the back of a pickup truck, and that he's heading off to fight, and you can see that he's frightened. Okay, so as Deb was saying, this is a community in lockdown and in curfew. So the animation is about the oppression that takes place within Kabul, but it's about, if it's about anything, it's about the oppression the whole community has suffered, men, women, boys and girls, over generations. And that's quite clearly demonstrated to us in the opening sequences. So I think that's kind of, this community is a product of, it's stuff that's being done to the community. So there's a phrase that's stated within the story that says it all. We are at the edges of empires at war with each other. So in a way, this animation gives you a glimpse into this world that is on the edges of lots of other wars and conflict. So the harsh reality is punctuated with dream story sequences that are about a fantastical elephant king. The telling of these stories offers a means of escapism for the characters on the screen, but anybody who's watched this film will probably also agree it also offers you, the viewer, some relief as well, because some of the scenes of the real landscape are quite harrowing. So it gives us a little bit of respite from that brutal landscape. One thing that really struck me was the use of colour, and you don't have to be particularly in an analytical frame of mind to see that. It's quite clear that the filmmaker's use of colour is key and significant. So Kabul is rendered in dark, muted colours, purples, blues, browns. The dream and story sequences, by contrast, are vivid primary colours, bright oranges, but secondary colours as well, greens, bright yellows. I watched the film in the room that I'm in right now, which is a small room very small room, about 1 metre by 2 metres, maybe 1.5 metres by 3 metres. And I had my computer screen on, and each time the dream sequences came on, my room was filled with a glow of bright primary colour. So that was kind of interesting. And these animations that represent these dream sequences, these story sequences, are different in style to the landscape of Kabul as well. They're quirky, they're kaleidoscopic, they're surreal, and they're fantastical. So it was a really interesting, approach to the two different worlds that we see in the film. So the central character, she's possibly the smallest character we see in the film, apart from her younger brother, who's smaller than her. But she's clearly tough, resilient, determined, and finds ingenious ways of operating beneath the radar. So that was really quite interesting. And it's basically the story of this child who is desperately trying to bring together the torn fragments of her family. And we see that represented in the film metaphorically as well as, within the plot of the film. As the film progresses, we start to hear the warnings that war is yet again coming. And as normal life in Kabul and war start to merge, we see jet fighters flying over the streets. So do the images of reality, what we've been seeing of Kabul, and fantasy, they start to merge as well. So we're starting to wonder which world we're starting to inhabit as the viewer. To the point where the filmmakers kind of represent a mixed montage of images that are both dreamlike and reflecting the reality of war on the ground. I think it's beautiful and brutal in equal measure. It's definitely worth watching. And it is available to watch on our YouTube channel. Is that correct, Elisa?
Just on YouTube, yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, that's my few thoughts.
Very good. Yeah, I thought the use of colour also, I'm glad you brought that up, because what I found in some of the reading that I was doing about the film is in Afghanistan there is a term called honey light. And I just thought, what a perfect way to depict it, because although the reality depicted, kind of the real side of her story, is very bleak, I think that kind of honey light really shines through even then. But yeah, I thought they were really smart in how they separated the two worlds. Some reviews did mention that it was a little bit tedious going back and forth between reality and the story state. But I think it pays off because of, like Deb said, that kind of climax at the end where they come crashing together in such a moving and powerful way. Rich, that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Really interesting to hear everybody's opinions about, I think, quite a poignant film. I personally loved this film. I had thoughts that I might like it because the studio that produced it just does brilliant work. They've been Oscar nominated on a number of occasions. I found it thrilling. I thought it was deeply moving and also very entertaining. Although we've mentioned that it was quite dark, I think there were absolutely moments in the film that had me giggling even at times. There were really accents of sometimes quite slapstick humor, sometimes, just quite witty humor. So I thought that it did really balance it out. And I think those story sequences in particular did a really good job of conveying adult themes in a childlike way without in any way belittling a child's perspective. I think it actually highlighted the fact that, children are often the most observant and the most instinctive in their response to the world. And I thought, the film at no point made you feel like oh, this sweet young girl going through the world, poor thing, she really held her own, and you really were able to see this story through her perspective, which I thought was really powerful and quite a nuanced and difficult task for a filmmaker to accomplish, that I think they did really, really well. I also really enjoyed the underlying intricacies of feminism that they were able to weave throughout the film. It kind of reminded me, and I know I'm not the first or only person to compare this film, but I thought it was a lot like the animated film Persepolis. Persepolis? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it really reminded me of that, kind of that strong young female tackling her world and dealing, with oppression in a really powerful way. I did think that the hair cutting sequence, if I'm gonna Deb said, if I'm gonna nitpick,
yeah, nitpick. You nitpick. Don't let me be on my own.
We gotta do it, right? We gotta do it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very cliched. I thought it was quite, it was a classic kind of Mulan moment. We can probably count, the number of hair cutting sequences for young girls coming into their own power. And also I found it really frustrating that although we saw her hair being cut, before we actually saw it cut, there wasn't any sense of attachment actually portrayed to her hair. So it didn't feel like a big loss because we didn't even get a wide shot of, oh, this is how long her hair is, isn't it? Isn't it quite scary that she has to cut it all off? We kind of saw bits of it, but never the full view, which I personally found a bit frustrating.
I think for me it was that thing of it was a little bit predictable. Like I was kind of 5 minutes ahead of the film. That's why it didn't quite work for me.
Yeah, it kind of missed the kick of it a little bit. I think maybe even if it would have been more powerful if we just for once didn't see the process of it being cut, but she just came out and it was like, I did it, no questions asked. But, who am I to say? I didn't make an Oscar nomination film. Just my opinion. That being said, though, I don't know how else, without her cutting her hair, they could have really made that transition. So I kind of like the way that they embraced the inevitable with that beautiful way they portrayed the bond between the two sisters, that kind of knowing acceptance.
Okay, I've got a way that they could have done it. And that seemed to make more about the brothers' clothes, because all of a sudden the brothers' clothes kind of like, oh, here you go, here's some brothers' clothes. And actually, if there was maybe there was a moment earlier that was about kind of, because they were selling her dress in the market, weren't they? But the brothers' clothes were kept, maybe for the little one, but
yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there's something.
There is, and I think you're right. I think there's definitely a way that it could have been kind of more emotive.
Can I interrupt a sec? Elisa, the idea of the film review, is it that we that people can suggest films that we review in the future? Is that correct?
We've been trying to pick titles that are accessible for everyone, Rich. So we'll look at films that are freely available. That's okay. Right, isn't it, Lisa?
Yes, that's right. This one actually isn't freely available, but now with all the resources coming out, there's no reason why we can't choose films. We could potentially, what I'd be happy to do is maybe do some kind of a voting system. Maybe we can do that.
I just wondered, we were talking about hair cutting, which is something that doesn't really, I don't have to think about too much myself. But I wondered if our viewers who are watching right now, who are busy commenting, might want to come up with some suggestions of films. It's your thing, Elisa. You're curating this. But I just thought about, you got me thinking about films with hair cutting scenes in them. So, I don't know.
Should we do a whole month's worth of haircutting films?
Yeah. So if you viewers have got not for this film review, But just interesting films with haircutting scenes in it might be interesting to compare and contrast.
Let's see which one is the most emotive. I'd be really curious who does
I've got a great film with haircutting in, but I'll tell you about it later.
Oh.
I think it's also a good idea to say at this point too that the future film reviews are not just going to be us three. Elisa's gonna host it and continue to host it, but we're planning to get our friends and of Somerset Film kind of involved. So maybe indicate too if you're up for kind of being involved and reviewing a film too. So.
Yes, that's a very good point. I'm a terrible host.
No, rubbish.
You're right. We are going to be. I do want to say, like you said, if there is anybody who's interested, a film keen bean, by all means, reach out on our Facebook or on our website. Send us an email if you want to get involved. Yeah, the more voices we hear, the more diverse voices we can get.
Yeah.
That would be great. I do also have some questions for you guys. Nothing major, nothing philosophical really, but just I was wondering if there was anything with this film that maybe you didn't expect, something that surprised you, disappointed you, or moved you in a particular way. If you can think of anything.
Who do you want to answer that first? Go with Rich.
Okay.
Go.
Something that surprised me or moved me in a particular way. I think what's interesting about the film is that it. You talked earlier about it almost being seen through Western eyes. And the film poster is a little bit like, I think you said Time magazine.
National Geographic.
National Geographic, sorry. I think that what the film sets out to achieve as much as anything is portraying a story that, I mean, it's an animation to start with, so we're automatically kind of offered an easy way into life on the streets in Kabul. So I suppose, you can read stories in newspapers, on the news, on social media. You can get your news if you want to, and you're offered a particular kind of perspective on what life might be like. I think that seeing young men shouting at women who are old enough to be their mothers, get back in your house, that's, whether it's an animation or real film, it's a shock, isn't it? And you stop and you contemplate, and then that's immediately followed with a fantastical kaleidoscopic animation. So it's kind of, you are brought up and down all the way through the film, I think. So in terms of what surprised me, I think it's what the film set out to do. It portrayed for me a life, and using a kind of animation style that allowed me in to have a glimpse of what life might be like on the street. So yeah, that's my comment on that one.
That is what surprised me. I don't know about surprise, but it definitely struck me was the journey that the character of the mother goes on, and how she confronts the violence at that, in that sort of later sequence in the film. That was really powerful, and also there were kind of two shots that sort of really struck me as well. And one was when violence is being committed against the mother, and the filmmaker actively takes us away in that she gives us a shot of the telegraph lines, and the daughter's trying to scramble for the photograph of the pieces of the photograph of her father, but the the filmmaker doesn't show us the violence; we hear it going on in the background. And I think that shot kind of really kind of caught my eye as well because of some filmmaking that Rich has been doing recently with the community in Wellington, and that was they were kind of doing a test piece, going out and getting shots locally, and that was one of the shots that they captured at that as well as one of the sequences that they made. So I think it kind of caught my eye because of that too. But also towards the end, the beautiful shot of the sky, the stars and the moon, and also the other thing that caught my eye, I don't know whether it caught my eye just because I'm a gardener, but I think it's very definitely there because of the quote by the poet Rumi at the end, which is about the flowers that are featured. And, you know, even in this war-torn kind of city, there are these little shoots, these little flowers that pop through every now and then and just catch my eye. And just that thing at the moment of as we kind of, it's what Laura was talking about the other day when she said about birdsong. And actually now, because we're not going out so much and there's not, you know, we're not driving around, we are hearing more of the birdsong and we're connecting with nature. And that there was all that through the film too, which I thought was really lovely.
Yes, it's so true. I live in a place where there's loads of birds, but I do swear there's even more of them now. I don't know if it's spring or what's happening, but they're everywhere. There were definitely a lot of parts that moved me in this film, so you know I won't go into that too much. But what did surprise me is I'm not usually the kind of person that listens out to a score too much. I'm more kind of character driven in how I consume films, more narrative driven. But the sound and the soundscape of this film really stood out to me. I think especially because you have the real world and then the story world. Reality was noisy, it was vibrant, it was active, it was filled with kind of men shouting and, you know, the sounds of the streets. And then you had the soundscape during the story, which was really bright and whimsical. And it, you know, as filmmakers, we're taught from day one, you know, sound is the one thing that so often gets neglected. And this film really made me understand more deeply the impact that sound can have. And even I thought it was beautiful how, although the film was produced by Westerners and the dialogue was in English, it wasn't subtitles, it was dubbed, the way that they pronounced the names, you know, Pavana wasn't Pavana, she was Pravana, you know, and I just thought that they did a really good job of adding that the authentic kind of feel through the sound. It didn't, in my opinion, I think I can see the effort to be as authentic as possible. And I thought that was really beautiful. I also, without wishing trauma on any children, and hear me out, I do kind of hope that some parents did take their children to see this, because although it's traumatic and it's scary, and a mother literally grabs the knife and, you know, by the blade in defense of her family and her children, and we see people beaten, and, you know, it's really gruesome. I think that it's unfair to shield our children in the West from brutalities that are so real with the children elsewhere, even today. So I think that there is something to be said about being careful not to be too gentle, because I think watching something like this when you're not too young, but maybe fairly young, maybe early teens I'm talking, it can ignite a flame of activism and empathy and compassion, where if you don't know that it exists, and I think this film gives you the opportunity to kind of gently ease into that, because it is animated. You know, you can't fight for something that you don't know about. So I think yes, I do understand that the programming of it would be difficult, but I think there is an argument that it should be for everyone almost, you know.
Yeah. It's definitely a film that would be a good one to show in a secondary school. And in fact, on the film's website, there's an educational pack that teachers can download too. So it would definitely be a really good resource for teachers in PSHE lessons or something like that. I just want to pick up on something that Rich said earlier, and which is about violence in animations. Because actually, in certain animations, there's an awful lot of violence, albeit that the characters are they're not not necessarily human beings being portrayed, but there's a lot of violence. We don't always see it in the same way as there was a point at which the camera moves away in this one, but actually there's a lot of violence in animations.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Deb, you actually, before, when we were putting this film review together, you told me that in our BFI academies and things, we often will ask our participants to comment on a scene, line, or shot. Now, I know we don't have too much time left, but I was just wondering if there is a scene, line, or shot for both of you that maybe stood out, whether it be good or bad, that you'd like to comment on.
Okay, so my line is where it comes back to that scene where the mother is confronting that violence, and the man says to her, "You're mad." That really struck me for lots of different reasons, which we won't go into now because we haven't got time. And as I've mentioned before, my shot was of the telegraph poles, of that moment when a director chooses not to show something.
That's good. My line would be the line I mentioned earlier. We are at the edges of empires at war with each other, which kind of set the undercurrent for the whole film in a way, in that this isn't something that happens over there, but we're all complicit in it, even if it's in our history generations back.
That's a really good point.
So that would be the line, I think. And in terms of a scene, I think it's not so much a scene. I think the whole animation is very beautiful. I think it's the contrast that's there, and it's what you're saying. I'll tell you what my favourite scene is. There's a scene, isn't there, towards the end, which is a fantasy scene again. It's a story dream sequence with with the brother, the older brother, who's a character that kind of exists throughout the film, and who our central character's mother and his mother never speak of him and how he died. Is there a scene towards the end where he's heading towards the Elephant King and he's with a donkey, I think, and the way he dresses the donkey, the way it's animated is so, as you say, Elisa, it's slapstick, and it's really great. Yeah, so I think that would be my scene, and then that would be my line, that we are at the edges of empires at war with each other.
Elisa, I think you've got more out of this film than I did. So the bit I didn't get
Okay.
is the opening sequence where we see Suleiman lying in the circle, and kind of my interpretation of that was it was kind of womb-like, but
yes,
that must allude to what happens to him, and I didn't get it.
No, that's a good point. I forgot it opened in that way because so much happens in the film that you kind of get swept up in it.
Yeah.
I think. Any thoughts on that, Rich?
I think that as with most films made by filmmakers who are really thinking about what they're doing, if there's a thought in your head, it's been planted there by the filmmakers. So I too felt that it was womb-like. That was my immediate thought, and so I think there is a reference to that going on there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To me, it also is reflective of kind of I don't know. We have a tendency of overthinking, don't we, as film lovers? But
Definitely.
to me, it really goes back to this idea of how, because it's kind of this child, so sweet, so innocent in this womb-like situation, surrounded by blackness, and it kind of, to me, represents our absence. You know, the absence of help, the absence of unity, the absence of Westerners empathizing, because it's, you know, they're there and they're so vulnerable, but we're nowhere to be seen, really. Generally speaking.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's, yeah, I knew you'd know.
I don't think anyone knows, but I had a favourite line as well, guys. I really liked right at the end, raise your words, not your voice.
Yeah.
I thought that was really powerful, especially, you know, with how dominated everything is by the news now, and fake news and clickbait and everything. And it's just to remember that it's not about how loud we can shout, but what it is that we actually lend our voices to, which, you know, I want to take a moment to just say, you know, absolutely coronavirus and everything that we're doing is because of that right now, but you know, not to forget the people that are still, you know, fighting for their rights and marginalized. And, you know, we have to remember that there's so much to be taken care of, and obviously there's only so much we can do, but this film really reminded me of that actually there's so much going on, so many people that need our support. So it's just about finding, like in the article you sent there, finding the kind of group of people, a person that we want to support, and doing something really proactive and acting rather than just, you know, raising our voices about it, raising awareness about it.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah, I think we're super close to coming to the end of this. I can't believe we have almost done an hour. Can I get a one-word review? Just because that's fun. Anybody watching, if you'd also like to give one, that would be great.
We've got quite a few people watching. It's good work, Elisa. Jacqueline's asked if you could pick one scene from the film with the strongest message, which one would it be?
That's a good question.
Have
you got an answer to that one?
We're all gone to silence.
Thinking. The strongest message.
I guess it is. I think it's the one you mentioned, Elisa, which is kind of the end of the film. But I had to rewind the film and listen to that twice, which you can't do in a cinema.
Me too. I did the same thing.
Oh, okay. So would we have picked it up if we'd just had the one viewing in the cinema? But actually, maybe it's the scene at the prison where that one man carries. Oh God, I've given away the ending now. But he's carrying her father, and you know, and he says to the other guy with the gun, "It's just one man." You know, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, I think I'd say. I mean, there's loads. The whole film is a strong message throughout. So, I think the ingenious nature in which our central character exists and lives her life and finds ways of, like I said earlier, operating beneath the radar to achieve what she needs to achieve, and then discovers that other children in her community are doing the same thing. And it's as surprising to them that other people had that idea. And I suppose it kind of highlights what lengths we will go to, you know, to find the truth and to pull our family together in this particular case. So there's a moment in the film where she meets with a friend, and there's a little bit of a scuffle, and then we realise. I think you've already done the spoiler on this, but Elisa.
I'm reading
But,
it already.
no, I think it might have been Elisa, but there's the moment where she realizes that this other child that she's speaking to has had the same thoughts and is operating in the same way, and that's kind of, it's a testament to how actually within that environment, which is being controlled by authoritarian adults, men, how children are finding a way of existing. So that's a pretty strong scene, I think. And is a sort of, the film is as much about the ingenuity of children as anything else. So that's one of the messages. Just going back to Jacqueline's comment, I would probably say that's one of the really strong scenes.
Are there any other questions at all, Rich?
I put out a request for films with haircutting scenes in. So people have got a few minutes just to get back in on that. Mihal is watching. He says he's got one, but he's not posted it. So, but I've posted Full Metal Jacket. That is the film with the haircutting scene in it.
Yeah.
For a moment, I posted it and then I thought it is Full Metal Jacket, isn't it? But that's I mean, because you're talking about how maybe you could lose that scene in The Breadwinner of the haircutting, but you couldn't lose that scene in Full Metal Jacket, I don't think.
No. Very, very true. I did want to also, if we've got time, first of all, I just want to let you know that, as we said, as Deb mentioned, it will be different hosts next week. So we'll be joined by Dan, our technical manager, and a special guest who's yet to be confirmed. We are going to be reviewing Lulu Wang's The Farewell, which is a dark comedy. Before we go, guys, and people in the comments, feel free to also join in. I'd love to hear yours. Can you give me, Deb and Rich, your top 5 animated films?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, I know we haven't got much time, so I will rattle through mine. So number 1 is Robin Hood, and so this is a Disney. It's quite an old animation, and the reason I picked it is because it's the first film that I remember being taken to see. Apparently my dad said that I was actually taken to see Bedknobs and Broomsticks, but I have no recollection of seeing that, and I think I was probably only 2 at the time, but I think I might have been 4, and we got taken to the cinema, and the reason why I remember it so much is because in those days it was film, obviously, and when you walked into the cinema, we were late. I don't know why, but we were late, and so we missed the opening 15 minutes of the film. And we watched the film, and then in those days, it would just loop back round again. And so we watched 3/4 of the film, and then we stayed and watched the opening. And I remember my mom saying, "No, come on, we've got to go now." And I was really disappointed because I could, I just sat there and watched it again. You know, and those characters of, Sir John, voiced by Peter Ustinov, and Sir Hiss, that wonderful snake. Yeah. So number 2 on my list is Toy Story 3. Pixar, got to be there really. Number 3 is the Triplets of Belleville, which is by Sylvia Shemaine. At number 4, okay, it's not the best animation in the world, but again, just in terms of kind of my childhood, and it is the animated Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit of a cult classic, and again, got taken to it by my dad, and kind of like, we didn't get taken to the cinema very often as children. I don't know why. I think it's partly because we were really poor. So those moments of going to cinema, and because and that's the other thing about Robin Hood is that we only had a black and white telly until kind of I was about 9, 10, and so cinema was about colour. So Lord of the Rings, and then finally, for my 5th one is probably one that people haven't heard of. It's French animation called A Cat in Paris. Check it out.
Oh, I'm gonna write that down.
Oh, honourable mention for Wallace and Gromit and the Snowman. Got to mention them. But
Yes.
didn't make my top 5.
Thank you, Deb. What about you, Rich?
Okay, so I'll rattle through this really quickly because we haven't got very long. So, funnily enough, Bellevue Rendezvous. You mentioned a film there, Deb. Bellevue Rendezvous is Sylvia Charmaine film.
It must be the same one, Rich. Yeah, I've just used.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it perhaps got 2 titles. The guy. It's about the Tour de France. He gets kidnapped. Oh, okay. No, that's one of my films. It's amazing. I put Wall-E in there. Which is just a wonderful film, and I think it's the first film, without trying to get overly techie about it, it's the first animated film where I was really aware of the filmmakers playing with depth of field. Do you know what I mean? Where you've got Wall-E in the foreground, and it cuts to a flower that's on the horizon, and you see the depth of field and the change of focus. So suddenly animation isn't on a flat plane anymore. And just to speed things up, 3 films by Aardman, any of them.
Fair enough. I can't argue with that.
What about you, Elisa?
I have put in my number 1, The Last Unicorn, which is a beautiful animated film. I'm sorry, I haven't written down the filmmakers, and I should know it. I don't. This is a film that we had on VHS, and I think I told you guys about it recently. But my mum taped over the ending, so we never saw the spoiler happy ending. We just thought it ended in like the climax of doom. And it just taught me how life is unfair, and I just came to accept it as a young child. And it's just beautifully animated. It's really lovely. And it's also like a feminist underdog. It's really great. I also put an anime, which is I Lost My Body. It's set in Paris, and it's about a dismembered hand that goes on a quest for love. That's all I'll say, but it's just beautiful. It's a wonderful love story, which you just didn't see coming. I also put The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which is once again an anime film. It's hand drawn, and it's whimsical and delicate, and it's absolutely beautiful. I put The Red Turtle because I've never seen a film that it's kind of like the anime version of Mother, that film that Jennifer Lawrence did, that was really poetic and chaotic and was a story about our relationship to Mother Nature. And The Red Turtle does something very similar, but in a really beautiful, poetic and gentle way. And then Coraline, because I watched it, I was definitely an adult, but I definitely watched it over and over again. I just thought it was really great. Great. Yes, please do leave yours in the comments. We are looking for film recommendations because we are sensibly and dutifully staying indoors. I want to say a huge thank you to Deb and Rich. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elisa.
Thank you. It's so great. And also, of course, a huge thank you to anybody who's watching at home. I really hope you enjoyed it. As I said, if there is any way, anything that you have in mind, how we can involve you guys more, please do let us know. Just as a heads up, this will be, fingers crossed, a weekly film review, but it is Easter next week, so we will be skipping a week. Our next film review is scheduled for Friday, the 17th of April. We'll keep it around lunchtime, so it's going to be 1:30, and we really hope to see you there. Any closing statements from my wonderful guests?
No, just well done, Elisa.
Yeah, thanks, Elisa.
Really enjoyed it.
Well done. Thank you so much, guys.
See you all soon.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.